then with Satan, so you have the idea of resistance. With the king of Babylon, you have the same thing with Nimrod, resistance, enslaving God's people. So they use them together, whether they believe that they're spirit beings or not. The people that use them today, doesn't matter. They're using the terms to represent their belief or the concept or the association that they have for them as representative of their view. So when you see these terms used, like Lucifer, lightning is describing a person, Satan, of course, openly, or those figures that have been associated with him, the goat-like leaders of the earth. Right? So that brings us forward to figures like the Baphomet, Pan, the goat god Pan, and we see it happen. We see pansexuals and others developing further today. They're all here. The same things that have been here or that were here in ways that are similar in times past, and through archaeology and through these writings, they've been here the whole time. And they're here now. The same people and things that we read about, only in their own way. Obviously, we're not dealing with a king of literal Babylon, although some may say people like Saddam Hussein. I'm talking about those who would refer to Lucifer in an ongoing living way. They're using it more so for a concept, not a living being, like a king of Babylon, if it's Lucifer. Or if it's Satan or lightning. Some do believe, obviously, in a spiritual entity and try to invoke that entity, like Aleister Crowley and others did. But others don't. Other Satanists just use it as a reference to their belief about the resistance they have to the idea that they should be controlled by things like religion. And so they associate things like lightning or fire, Prometheus, with the light bringer. And that's how it gets connected with Lucifer, the bringer of the dawn, the morning star, right? What does the dawn do? The dawn brings the light. So they connect things like morning star, Prometheus, fire bringer, Satan, knowledge bringer, or the one who wanted to give Eve knowledge in the Garden of Eden. They connect them all regardless of whether or not they have the same identity, because they all represent the same concept. Knowledge given to humans against the Most High that they believe is beneficial to them. But is it really? Well, what has happened since that time? Whether Prometheus, Lucifer, Satan, all of these entities that they would reference throughout history as those who enlightened humankind. And this whole enlightenment, illumination, is what connects it to the Illuminati. So when you see Illuminati, illumination, enlightenment, that is directly related to this whole idea of Prometheus, Lucifer being the light bearer, the bringer of light or knowledge, and Satan, bringer of knowledge, right? Knowledge of good and bad. God doesn't want you to have it. Why? Because then you'll be like him. Well, you know how they could have been like God without disobeying God? By doing what God said. And who do we know who did that? Who do we know in the Bible who tells us, I don't do what I want, I do what the Father says. What I see the Father do, I do. What I hear from the Father, I teach. Jesus, the bright morning star. He's the one. Why? Because he's telling us the will of the Father. He listens to the Father and he tells us Jah's will. If Adam and Eve would have listened to Jah, they would have been exactly like God, without disobeying him. So they did not have to disobey him in order to be like him, because he was in the process of teaching them as they were ready to receive the information. What do we know that's like that today? A child. So that they were prepared to use it right. What happened the second they got the information they weren't ready to use? They used it wrong. So none of this has to do with Jah making them do anything, but it has to do with him giving them the option of using what he made them to use. Our spirit and our image of Jah in our mind. But he didn't force us. He gave us the option, just like he gave Satan, just like he gave Jesus. Satan chooses to do his own thing. Jesus listens to the Father. Who seems like they're doing better? When I read Jesus or when I listen to people who want to resist Jah, I don't see them doing better. They may have a few more pleasurable moments, but then they die like everybody else. And then what? You sure they're better? I'm not so sure that they're better after that. Just because they have pleasure at other people's expense now is not really a great evidence they're going to be able to do that after their death. So our misuse of our knowledge has been our curse. That we have used the knowledge we have had since time we're born and that we develop before we're ready. And every single one of us has failed. And we've sinned. Sin is simply the doing of something that Jah wouldn't have done or had you do. Because it's bad for you. It's incorrect. Wrong answer. That's what it is. We're making a lot of bad choices or wrong answers because we took that knowledge on our own instead of receiving it from Jah so that we didn't have to get it by eating from the tree. The tree represented something very important, the very knowledge we have right now versus knowledge we could have obtained the right way. And what do we say to our children often? You want to go find out the hard way or the easy way? You want to listen from me? I've been through this. I'm going to tell you what's happening and how you can best deal with it. Or you can go out there on your own and make your own choices and find out in ways that are just too difficult because not everything is as it seems. You might survive it, but you're going to suffer a little bit because you're not listening to me. I've been through it. Or in Jah's case, I made it. I know you, and I know everyone around you, and I know what you're in. I will tell you what to do and how to live. Listen to me. I have a bunch of other sons and other things. Listen to me. That's all they had to do. I understand they had a choice, and that was their choice not to do so at that point. But it didn't benefit us. Can anyone tell us, even if we use fire, Prometheus giving us fire, has fire benefited humans? I guess now in the seasonal sense that we exist in, since the flood, because before the flood, the Bible says the earth was more, it had a different condition, which is consistent with what we see in the fossil record, with all the plant growth that would have had to have been there for the dinosaurs. It was more lush. Even pre-dynastic Egypt is consistent with an earth that was much different, non-seasonal. But we're seasonal now, and so fire has a part in keeping us warm and stuff, and we use it. But has fire really benefited us? Would we not have been able to eat from all the growth of the earth like Jah made us? And would fire, not having fire, have kept us from a lot of war and destruction? So how good really is it? It's good now that we're in this condition. Great, thanks. But I'd rather be in the other condition, that was before we had to use fire to do all these things. And really, has the knowledge that we have received, even our advanced technical knowledge, has that benefited us? It's led to our death throughout the centuries, and it has caused us to create weapons of mass destruction. Yes, it has allowed us to do good, but the good is defined in relative terms because it's a response to the condition we're in due to our bad choices. So we end up making some good choices in order to counteract the effects of our bad choices. But maybe we just shouldn't have made the bad choice in the first place. Maybe we should have listened to the one who was there to tell us what the right choices were to make, and then we would have known what to do, and then we could have done it ourselves from that point forward. Just like we teach our children, right? Don't we often say we're going to teach them how to fish instead of give them a fish? Well, once you teach them how to fish, you don't have to keep teaching them how to fish. Yeah, maybe you'll give them some pointers and, you've still fished longer and you could show them things, but you pretty much let them fish, right? Well, they didn't get to be taught how to fish because they ran out and tried to do it on their own and they didn't figure it out right. And the consequence is they're not good fishermen. They weren't good fishermen, fisher people. There's an analogy, and I'm sure you all got the point. But the thing is that we started out by not listening because, in part, it wasn't all us. It was Jah's son, the devil, the Satan, that resisted him. They wanted to do things in ways that were likely more similar to how they were allowed to do them in the spirit realm. And they were more familiar with Jah in the same way that children today being more familiar with our parents, we do things, right? We do things we wouldn't normally do around people we're more familiar with because we think we can get away with it, because we're more familiar with them. And we don't think they'll hold us as accountable. And yet, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't a loving parent hold a child accountable for doing something they know is going to be bad for them and other people? That's really what we're talking about on a greater scale with Jah and the sons of God. So all of these things we can show historically and over time, both by archaeological findings, records. When it comes to the associations people make today about Lucifer, Satan, we can answer those questions pretty clearly. We can show whether there's an association directly or not. And again, even if there's not, that's not really necessary for most people who promote Lucifer or Satan. Again, it all ties into the concept of resistance to Jah, just like the followers of Baal did. And that's why you see a resurgence in a lot of these practices that relate back to these ancient gods, like Baal. So never fear. Jah is always here. And if people on the earth or his spirit sons want to rebel against him and promote these things, Jah will use those who want to promote him and his son in everything that you choose to do. And that's why I'm here, to try to help you.